walking down the
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Get my head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. All right, all right, all right. How you doing today? Ooh. You know, it's been a busy week or so. We've covered news in Atlanta. The past couple of months, New York, Atlanta, DC. Been pretty busy. Been on a roll. Met some people in the newspaper industry. People I did not know, thanks to Morocco Coleman. People in Atlanta. People in New York, Cheryl Thompson Morton up at CUNY, City University of New York. She's working on the Black Media Project, of course. Black media, that's my realm. Isn't it interesting how technology has changed the game for newspapers, black newspapers, all newspapers? But since I'm black, I'm talking about black newspapers. A woman told me in Atlanta, Marian Alexis Scott, that without the black press, 47 million people of African descent do not have a voice. So it is critical, despite the changes in technology, despite the fact that newspapers are less and less popular, that people are getting more of their news via the tablet, via the cell phone. It is important, it is imperative that we keep the black press alive. Yesterday, I had an opportunity to go over to Bel Air Road in East Baltimore to the Agoji Project. Met some fascinating people, male and female, young and not young. It's a program that teaches martial arts, Spanish, life skills, right down Bel Air Road. Amazing. They really have the attention of the young people. think one of the things that stood out in my mind is how much we have to be a part of our young people's education. When we are not a part of it, we leave it to others to do. And despite all the things that we have going on, we still have to educate our babies. So we're having some technical challenges with our guests, but we're gonna try this another way. Sometimes what can go wrong with technology, what can go wrong will go wrong. And let me tell you, there's always something with technology, isn't it?
Hey, I'm still trying to get in the doggone computer.
Okay, so we're going to do this via phone. Is that okay?
Do it on the phone?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right, well, I want to welcome you to the show. We have the one.
Trying to get my computer to work, and it doesn't want to cooperate.
It's okay. It's okay. Forget about it. We're going to do it right here. Is that okay with you?
That's fine, if it's okay with you.
It's fine. It's fine. So we are just honored and pleased. You are an icon.
That's what they say.
You are. So, Alexis Scott, would you call yourself, and now, this is the amazing part, and I can only imagine what you were thinking, but you grew up in the Black newspaper industry, but you ended up, well, on your journey, you became a journalist at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
That's right. It's a little bit ironic, but it makes sense when you think about the way I was raised and the era that I came up. When I was a youngster, let's see, segregation was still in full effect in the South here in Atlanta. But my father, thanks to my father, my parents, and thanks to being in the newspaper business, we were exposed to a lot of things, a lot of issues, a lot of people, different kinds of people. And my father in particular was in the segregated U.S. Army during World War II. He was a photographer with his unit. And his unit was the only Black unit present at the liberation of one of the concentration camps. And he took pictures that just were unbelievable, even to him. He was only 22 years old at the time. And he said it was just so horrific, he had to finally put his camera away. And he did bring back some pictures that he kept, the negatives himself. Rather, he's supposed to turn everything in, but he kept some of the negatives. So I grew up seeing these photographs. And he was determined that he decided that he cannot beat hate with hate. And you can't kill people just to kill them. And the thing that blew his mind is that these Jews were white people. And they were treated so inhumanely. And he wrote about it many years later. He said about Black and in slavery, we had value. He said they didn't want the Jews to be on the planet at all. And so he was determined that he was going to challenge the system, but do it in such a way as he just presented himself as a human being. And he was very artistic. He painted and he played chess. That's how we saw the United States, with him playing chess. He wanted a rating, so in order to get a rating, he had to play in tournaments. So every summer we'd go, not every summer, but he'd go sometimes, and then he'd take us. We had a wonderful trip out west in 1959, and we stayed in this hotel that was in Omaha, Nebraska. And we had this huge ballroom that we stayed in with these wonderful rollaway beds that were big and fluffy and huge. And we didn't know they put us in there because they didn't want us in the hotel rooms. But we thought it was great. And my mother would go across the street to the bus station and get us hamburgers every day. So we were having a good time. We didn't even know. That was the other thing. My parents sheltered us from some of the ugliness of segregation. And they did a pretty good job until about the time that the freeways got built, the national highways. We used to go to Florida every summer too, and we had my great grandmother had a house down there thanks to her son, my grandfather, who was so successful with the newspaper early on. She had a beach house in New Smyrna Beach, which was the black beach outside of Daytona Beach.
Smyrna?
Every summer for vacation, and she'd go visit us. My great grandmother would go with us to visit her good friend, Miss Mary McLeod Bethune, at Bethune-Cookman College, which was in Daytona. And I met her one time. I was a little kid. I remember we took her over to visit with her, and I don't remember much about her, but she was just a real imposing figure, very grand and very, very dark and very beautiful. Because my mother was very fair and beautiful, so I was really impressed with Dr. Bethune because her skin was so dark. It was the impression that it made on a little kid.
I understand.
In any case, we were raised around different kinds of people. When my father played chess, we had a lot of whites, including Jews, come over to play chess on Saturday night in the basement of our house. And all kinds of people came. So
to play chess?
Play chess, yes.
Now, I done heard of card games.
The Morehouse?
I've heard of people playing cards all night.
They played chess all night. It was so funny, too, because they'd be down there smoking cigarettes and drinking drinks, but not drinking alcohol, because my parents didn't drink, so they didn't have it in the house. But they smoked. Some of the smokers came. My parents didn't smoke or drink. But I remember one time somebody left a pack of Pall Malls. My dad said, "You want to try one?" I said, "Sure, let me try it." I was like 5 years old or something stupid. So he lit it up and it brought me to my knees. So I didn't smoke until I got to college. I just smoked for about 10 years, but it was enough to make me not want to do it.
Pall Malls, my God, no filters or nothing. Woo. On a 5-year-old, why don't you just run me over with a truck?
Right. That was his idea. He believed in you experiencing things to learn your lessons.
That'd have been a lesson. Pall Malls, the red pack.
That's right.
Hot busters. Whew.
That's right. So in any case, he was different. I mean, he was really a wonderful, expressive human being. When he started oil painting too, when I was about the same age.
Really?
He loved classical music, and he'd play it downstairs in the basement, and he'd paint in the summertime, I remember. And he entered his artwork in the first Piedmont Park Arts Festival. At the time, the parks were still segregated, but they loved his work, so they took it for the exhibit. And he took us to see it. They didn't want to let us come in the park to see the artwork because it's supposed to be segregated. But if my father said, "This is my artwork," so they let him come in, let us come in to see it. And so it was outside, too, outdoors. It didn't make any sense at all for the park to be segregated, but it was. And so we went to the park and we saw his artwork. And he was just like that. He challenged the system by participation and daring them not to let him participate. And so people didn't want to not let him participate. When he went to play in the chess tournament in Nashville, Tennessee at the Peabody Hotel, it was segregated. So they didn't want to let him come in. So the head of the tournament came to the front desk and said, "If he can't come in, we're going to all leave." And so they didn't know what to do, so they sputtered. They said, "You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this." Gave him a whole list of things he could not do. And he said, "I came to play chess." And so he stayed and he played chess. So that was his way of dealing with the system. So my choice to go work at the Journal-Constitution was my way to deal with the system too, to challenge the system and dare them to not hire me. And plus, I went to a summer program called the Michelle Clark Fellowship Program at Columbia University in New York City in the summer of 1974. And that program was designed to get more people of color into newspapers and broadcasting. I was in the newspaper division. And so that's what happened. I just decided to do that. I had gotten married, had a baby, divorced, and come back home all in the space of 4 years. And I wanted to work, but I didn't finish college. I dropped out of college and got married. So I wanted to go to work. And I ended up working at the Atlanta Bureau of Newsweek. And then I learned about the summer program at Columbia University. So I ended up applying for that, and I got in. And part of the wonderful thing about that program was they'd help you get a job. I wanted to come back to Atlanta because I had just gotten married for the second time. And I wanted to come back to Atlanta where my husband was then. And they helped me get the job at the Constitution.
Were you the only black there?
I was not the only black there. I was the only black woman reporter. There was another black woman on the city desk. Her name is Tina McElroy Anson. She's a novelist now, and may have heard of her. She lives down at St. Simon's now on the coast in Georgia. But she was on the copy desk. I was the only black woman who was hired. There was a black guy, Ernie Reese, who was part-time in sports. And there was another black guy whose name was Chuck Bell. He was a reporter, but he was like a cowboy. He was so weird. He sounded more redneck than the redneck. But those were all the blacks in the newsroom at the time that I started.
Was there a certain pressure on you?
Absolutely there was. And when I first got there, Maynard Jackson had just been elected and just been installed as mayor in 1974, first black mayor of Atlanta. And they were out for blood. They did not appreciate him because he was so fierce and so forceful. And the newspaper wanted to figure out, well, they decided to do a series on Atlanta, the state of the city kind of series. And when the thing came out, I had been there for maybe a couple of months or less. The story came out. It had pictures of the Ivan Allen, Robert Woodruff, had a Coca-Cola, all the white leadership on top of the page. It said, Atlanta used to be a Camelot, and now it's a city in crisis. And at the bottom was all the black superintendent, black mayor, black police chief, and black this and black that. And it was like, which way is Atlanta going? Is it going to hell in the handbasket? Is it going to survive? So it was really awful, really awful. And I almost quit, so I had to call my mentors and say, what in the world is going on? This is awful. I can't take it. These people are so racist. And they said, nope. You can't leave. That's the whole point of being there. You can bring your perspective.
Yeah, that's easier said than done. You could have said, why don't you come work here?
Yes, it was. I said, why me? But I decided that I should stay, and I did stay, and I got to. They came to me because I was a news person on the city desk. There was a black person on the city desk, and they knew I had sense. They also knew about my family, my father's newspaper. My father was working at the newspaper at the time. My grandfather was already dead many years. But that's the other thing. My grandfather was killed when he was 32 years old, 4 years after the paper went daily. No, 2 years after it went daily, 4 years after it was started. It started in 1928, went daily in 1932. He was killed in 1934. So 6 years after the paper was started, he was killed. So that had an impact on my father, too. He was 11 years old. His father was killed. So,
what do you think that impact was?
Was that you can't kill people. You just can't do it because it's not right. And it tore him up. And as Andy Young always likes to say, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth leaves everybody blind and toothless. And I think that was father's viewpoint as well, that killing is not the solution. That he lived his whole life as a kind of, not really a pacifist, but a peaceful person. He wasn't as peaceful that, I mean, he thought Martin Luther King Jr., they used to have conversations on Auburn Avenue because that's where his SELC office was, where the newspaper was, county where it was. They used to talk from time to time that he wasn't quite pacifist because he did fight in World War II, even though they didn't give the blacks guns until the Battle of the Bulge. They were afraid they were going to shoot the white officers. So they wouldn't even give blacks guns. So it's crazy.
So your dad, you would see Dr. King?
I didn't see him much. I don't remember seeing him as a child.
But Coretta Scott is your cousin, you come to find out.
Well, that was something that just happened recently. Just earlier this year, I found out that Coretta Scott King and I are related. Our Scotts are related by way of my great-great-grandfather.
But you knew her?
I did know her very well. Not very well, but I knew who she was. We had conversations. She would call me, especially when I took over the family paper. She'd call me from time to time and see how I was doing, especially when I first got there. She said, I hope you do well, and let me know if you need me to do anything for you, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if she knew we were related then or not, but I never asked her if we were related. She never said anything.
You've seen other black newspapers come and go.
Have I?
Sure.
Really? What, not in Atlanta?
Weren't there other black newspapers?
There was a black newspaper before the Atlanta Daily World started. It was called the Atlanta Independent, but it was mostly started as a fraternal publication out of the Oddfellows organization. And so they didn't cover things broadly the way the Daily World covered everyday life and covered schools at the Atlanta University Center and everything. But they just sort of did stuff about their fraternal organization, what people were doing and thinking, pieces that I never saw. But it stopped publishing in 1933 before the Daily World Daily was publishing 3 times a week by that time.
And we should state for the record that the Atlanta Daily World is America's first black daily newspaper.
Yes, first one that was sustained. Because they tried to do one in Chicago. It lasted 3 weeks. But they didn't know how to sell it. They didn't know how to market and do all that stuff. My grandfather apparently was a great marketer. He was... my father's story he used to tell, which is not politically correct, he would say he could sell ice to an Eskimo. He was just turn on the arm charm and he could just do it, get it done, get the job done.
So here's my $1 million question. Where is the black newspaper? Where's the world of black newspaper today?
Well, it's in a bit of flux because there's so much competition now. You can just become a black newspaper overnight and just say we're a black newspaper and do it as a digital publication without cost, pretty much. You just have to have a graphic design and give a logo and be a newspaper. So there's a lot of people who blog now who say they are newspapers, but they don't really do real journalism. They just do opinion stuff. So there is a difference. But I think the Atlanta Daily World is still going on, even though we don't own it anymore. We could no longer afford to keep it after the tornado took the roof off our building, as well as interrupted our publishing cycle. So I looked around for a home for us and found Real Times Media, which owns the paper now. And they also bought John Singstack's newspaper, Chicago Defender, which is the oldest black publication, I think, in the country. It was still published in 1905, as it was founded. Michigan Chronicle and the New Pittsburgh Courier, as well as Memphis Tri-State Defender. So those are all a group of publications that had just been sold because Singstack died in the 90s, late 1990s, right shortly after I had taken over the paper at home. So I knew about the publications. I knew about Real Times Media because they had bought them from another group that bought them, couldn't make it go again. So
What then is the mission of the Black newspaper? Is it the same mission today to advocate for Black people?
I think yes. The mission of the Daily World was to inform, educate, entertain, and inspire. And I think that remains the same for the Daily World and all Black newspapers.
It's a tough business.
It's a tough business because, especially now with the internet and everything, all social media has sucked up all the advertising. And
Facebook and Google, yeah, they dominate in the advertising.
right, you got to have eyeballs in order to get the advertising. So that's what
and then they change that game up. You think you got it, and before you know it, they change the rules. It's just like basketball. 1 minute the rim is at 10 feet, and then Google will do something, and then next thing you know, the goal is 10 and a half feet.
That's right. It's exactly right. The rules change all the time, but you have to hang in there.
Yes, we do. And you can't be but so dependent on social media. I don't know if I told you, but I had a page with 211,000 followers on Facebook. And then all of a sudden one day it was vamoose.
The page was gone?
Gone.
They took it away?
Yes, they did. I was touching 4 to 6 million people per month. And so the lesson I learned is don't be dependent on Facebook. If you're dependent on Facebook to make your money, then you don't have any money.
Right, right.
Because someone can take it away from you at any time. So you have to have...
You have to have your own website, your own page.
Well, I have my own page. I mean, the social media component. Another lesson, let me put it differently. When you have a social media page, you don't own it.
Well, I'm not saying don't put it on Facebook or anything. You just put it on the internet.
Yes, but in this new digital world, you got to share it on social media, or email newsletter. Kind of like combinations, you know. Can't have just one way of skinning the cat.
Well, maybe you build up your followership and then you launch your own thing. If you have so many followers on social media before they take it away from you, because they don't want that competition. But if you get up just 25,000 followers, then you switch over to your own.
So we got a young man that posed a question. He said, what was the value of the deal with Real News Media? What made them a good suitor?
The fact that they had bought these other historic Black publications, the Chicago Defender, Pittsburgh Courier, and Michigan Chronicle. They were based in Detroit, and most of them had made their money on making widgets for the car industry. And so I knew they cared about the Black press and Black publications, and I figured they had the money to buy it. And we were in such dire straits at the time. We owed IRS a lot of money for withholding because we paid the printer and not the IRS withholding. We were just strapped for cash, and after the tornado was just really a bad time for us. So I looked for a home for them. I courted them, and they wanted the Atlanta market. They have a series of publications called Who's Who in Black, Atlanta, Chicago, Cleveland, all over the United States. About 20 at the time. I don't know how many they have now if they're still doing it. But that was another way they made money. They do the events as well as the publication.
I think we should note that even though you don't own the paper, you still are an influencer.
Yes, I am. And to some degree, maybe less each year. But until 2019, I was a public commentator on the Georgia Gang, which is a week in review politics show on Fox 5 Atlanta. So even after I sold the paper and left the paper, I left the paper in 2014. For 5 more years, I was still on television every week on the Georgia Gang.
What advice do you have for future Black news publishers, Black journalists, Black radio, television people?
I think you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to the community. One of the things that I always did while I was even publisher, before I was publisher, and when I was doing the newsroom, I participated in local organizations. So as a personal way to stay in touch with the community, to know who people were, what they were doing, and how they were doing, so that I could have that. That was part of my value that I brought, especially when I was at the AJC, because they didn't know anything about Black people. And when I took over the Daily World, I wanted people to believe in the paper. So they had to believe in me. So you have to have a credible person at the helm of the publication. And you have to be an advocate. It was funny when Shirley Franklin ran for mayor of Atlanta. My friends all teased and said, we need to change the name of your paper to the Shirley Franklin Atlanta Daily World, because I kept a story about her on the front page and the campaign, every issue. And then we were still publishing twice a week. We cut back on the number of days because we launched our website in 1999. So we kept it as a daily, but we didn't publish it twice a week. Should have cut it back to once a week because it was too expensive. Because you know how printing bills are. But we had lots of people who advertised, because I had been a vice president at the Journal-Constitution for 7 years before I came to take over the family paper. And I was the vice president of community affairs. So we had a monthly luncheon with all the community affairs people in corporate Atlanta. So when I left and took over the paper, I wrote them all. I said, okay, I need y'all's support. Y'all need to help me save this paper and give me some advertising. So they sent me to all their advertising people, and we were able to sign them up, most of them anyway. For some, either special sections, which was another way that we tried to make some extra money, to do special sections on education, health, and blah, 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 just to get some of the specialty advertising that we wouldn't get normally.
Emma Alexis Scott, how do we get Black people to support Black media?
You have to ask for the support. You just have to ask for it, and people will help you. I believe that. You have to give them something worth supporting. It has to be quality publication. You have to do quality media. Give them something that's going to help make their lives better, more interesting, more exciting. As I said, educate, inform, entertain, and inspire. Got to do those things. Otherwise, they don't care, because everybody's got plenty of stuff they can do otherwise.
Before we get out of here, is there anything you'd like to share? I always ask accomplished women, any advice for little girls?
I don't know that I have any advice for little girls, because it's still a tough society, because racism and sexism is still very real. And it's tough for young girls to stand up and stand out and be heard without somebody criticizing them or being too loud or too bossy or too whatever it is they think they are.
I see white women being groomed that way.
Being groomed to stand up and stand out.
Whether they wrong or not, like Karen in New York Central Park calling the police on a Black man for watching birds.
Well, that's racism. It's still strong.
But she feels entitled to be able to say that this Black man shouldn't be in Central Park watching birds.
That's right. Well, that's because racism is so strong in this country. However, I don't think she was groomed to be a woman speaking up. She was groomed to be a woman afraid. She is not. She wasn't groomed to be a strong leader. She was groomed to be a scared woman.
Yes, she was. So yesterday I had an opportunity to interview some little boys. It was in a boxing gym in a mentoring program. And have you interviewed any little kids?
Not lately.
They say the darndest things.
Ew.
I'm just reminded that I can't forget to include even the youngest of voices. They have something to say.
Yes. Well, they do. They do. And kids are much more exposed than we were because of the internet. So they have information that we didn't have and experiences that we didn't have as young people. So I think they do have something to say, and they're really trying to get it said.
Any final thoughts?
I don't have any, except that I'm sorry that I didn't get on the computer so I could see you today.
No, we can always work that out, but it was truly a pleasure to meet you. I'm so grateful to Morocco Coleman for making the connection. We had him on the show yesterday, but I told him he could not bring you on because we needed to speak with you separately, particularly because of your contributions and your history with the press, and specifically the Black press. But the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I remember coming to Atlanta. That was like our Baltimore Sun. You had to watch them because they were liable to say some slick stuff about the Black community.
That's right, because they were so ignorant. They didn't know. And they were, basing all their information on stereotypes and misinformation and disinformation that was in the air. It's terrible.
Well, we thank you for all that you have done, all that you will do, and however we can be of service, we're just a phone call away.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck to you.
We will keep swinging. God didn't tell me to stop, so I'm going to keep on. I have no choice. And then I met those young people yesterday. I got some new writers. They don't know. I plan on having them in a journalism camp. They're in boxing right now, but I plan to transition them right into journalism.
Well, that's great, because I think the power of the pen is mightier than the power of the sword.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So hang in there. I look forward to seeing you can expand to Atlanta.
Stop playing now. You know we love Atlanta.
All right.
Always a pleasure. Emmy Alexis Scott. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. So, folks, that Black press is very important. It will always be important to me. She said, expand to Atlanta. Stop playing. I love Atlanta. So we've Black USA, Atlanta, New York, and we can't forget Oakland. Certainly can't forget Texas. Can't forget Chicago and the Carolinas. There's so much power. She talked about the power of the pen. As I was speaking with those young people yesterday and looking at where they want to go. They were talking about being a boxer, being Tank Davis. I want to build some writers, some journalists, some people to write the story, record the story. And if you're interested, this is what I want you to do. Call me, 443-858-2684, 443-858-2684, 443-858-2684. My name's Donnie Glover. Good morning, world.